And tonight we are going to talk about saving on vacations, budget travel, whatever you want to call it, all things destination, I guess. So, this is really my favorite hobby. And word has gotten out that it is because even in church yesterday, a sweet older lady came up to me and said, "So I hear I need to talk to you if I want to plan a trip." I'm like, "I'm glad to. Let's do this." So the fun part about vacations is the deal to me. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about when we talk about saving on budget travel or vacations is so many times people come to me and they say, "Jenny, I want to go here on this date." And that's great. And you can find ways to save, but really you've thrown some of the ways to save out the window. The best way to save on a vacation is actually to go where the deal is, when the deal is, just like we would with our grocery shopping. I know that's kind of crazy sounding, but it's not saying, "Hey, I want to take the kids to Paris for Christmas." Instead, it's saying, "Hey, I'd love to go to Paris if a deal exists sometime in the next 9 months." I'm not set on any dates because when I don't have specific dates in mind, I can find some crazy, crazy deals. When you start to pigeonhole yourself into specific dates or specific places, your number of deals is getting smaller and smaller. So this concept is instead of, again, you picking the day, you picking the city, it's really going on a hunt and seeing what's out there. Where could I go that would be affordable for our family? And then playing around and seeing if you could make those dates work inside your family's schedule. And maybe you can't. Maybe we then say, "You know what, this deal didn't work," and we look for the next one. But you will find some crazy, crazy deals. So I'm going to try to hit all of the main topics. I mapped it out so that I could make sure we made it through in ways that we could save on flights and hotels and VRBOs and food and tickets when you get there. But I did want to start with that first key big point. So the best way to save on a vacation isn't trying to get the deal to fit what you want it to fit, but instead to go hunting for the deals and getting your vacation to fit that, whatever that deal might be. So to dive into how do we find the deals, because that's really the first big part of this, I want to share some websites that can be helpful in finding flight deals. And really, in today's world, flights are actually incredibly cheap. If you can find the right deal, you can go really far away and maybe not even realize how far you can make it. For example, anyone within driving distance to Atlanta right now, Alaska Airlines just started flying out of Atlanta 2 weeks ago. And because they just started flying out of Atlanta 2 weeks ago, you can find some crazy deals out of Atlanta to the places that Alaska is flying from Atlanta. So to give you some ideas of where Alaska is flying and how cheap this could be, we're talking San Francisco for $99 one way, $99 to come back, but that's still a $200 round trip ticket to San Francisco. We're talking San Diego, the same, $99, Seattle, Spokane, Washington. Alaska is also merged with Hawaii Airlines, so you could take this further if you really wanted to. You could go to some pretty amazing places, but that's just one example, and kind of learning that, spying that these deals are out there can be huge. Now, one of the easiest ways to know what are the deals that I could grab, I would recommend that you sign up for airline loyalty programs, even if you've never flown with those airlines. So if you live near Atlanta, that means signing up for Delta. That's a Delta hub, maybe Frontier, maybe Alaska. If you want to put this into your junk email, you can. But the point of signing up for these is so that you will get their emails when they're running deals. Frontier, for example, last week ran $19 flights to a number of the locations that they fly to in the US. Now, I know Frontier is one of the cheapest airlines that's out there. We're talking a $19 flight here. There's not much to complain about. Yes, it's a cheap airline. but you are getting all the way from, point A to point B, and you paid $20 to do it. So don't, cringe at the cheap airlines. We're not talking business class and first class. We're talking getting somewhere for $20, right? But knowing that they were running that promotion is your first battle. So signing up for their loyalty programs is going to get you their deal emails. It's going to let you know that they're running those promotions. Alaska, for example, signing up for those emails, you're going to know because when you sign up, they're going to ask you, what's your home airport? And they're going to send you deals that are catered towards the airport you're willing to leave from. So that's step one, is at least getting their loyalty junk mail. But that junk mail is going to at least tell you when some deals are running. And step two is just hunting the deals yourself. So that's where I want to share some websites for you to, bookmark or file away, but some go-to easy websites to find some flights. First off, I love kayak.com's Explore tool. Now, I know kayak is kind of weird. We're looking for flights. I don't know why they came up with the name. But when you head to Kayak's website, kayak.com, you'll see Explore up at the top, or just kayak.com/explore will get you there. And the fun way to use Kayak is not necessarily to find the actual deal. It's to find where to start to find your own deal. So a example here recently was one of my college girls, her boyfriend wants to travel around Europe this summer. And he has no money. He's a college student. So the plan was, how do we get him to Europe? Now, if your goal is to go to Europe, the first big tip I can give you is that you need to not care where you go in Europe. Once you get to Europe, everything is super cheap to move around. You've got trains, you have EasyJet, you have a number of cheap airlines that can move you from city to city. So your goal is just to cross the Atlantic Ocean and to get into the cheapest flight that you can to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So typically for us, that's actually Paris, little inside information there. But you can get into London fairly cheap, but you can't leave London. London charges almost a $200 tax to leave the UK. So we don't really want to go in and out of London. We might come through London, but we might go home through Paris or another city. You can do that. But here's where we use Kayak Explorer's tool. I want to get him to Paris. We decided that's probably the best bet for where he wants to go. So use the Explore tool. In the first box, we put in Paris. That's where we are leaving from. We're doing this backwards. We're saying I'm in Paris and I want to go anywhere in the month of May. So that was the third box, was picking just a specific month. I'm not picking dates. I'm just picking a month here. So I want to go anywhere from Paris because now I'm going to quickly see what cities, let's cross the pond, what cities are the cheapest cities to fly from Paris to. And in general, the logic is going to work the other way around. So I found a cheap flight from Paris to New York, but if I then turn this around, odds are that flight costs about the same to go from that city to Paris. So immediately I'm seeing, hey, New York City is $350. And you can zoom in not zoom out, you can zoom in and you'll get more numbers that fill in around you. You'll get some other ideas of, which one is the cheapest, which New York City airport is the cheapest. I can go up the coast. Don't forget about Boston. Boston could be some great deals. Now, your first thought I know is like, hey, Jenny, this is Southern Savers. I don't live in Boston. So this is where another term is going to come in for you guys. So yes, we just discovered Boston and New York. I could get to Paris for $350. Odds are round trip, that's really going to be like maybe $400. It's not going to be a bad flight. And I know you're thinking, Jenny, I don't live in New York and I don't live in Boston. So this is the term that you want to go, this is your new buzzword, but you want to learn about positioning flights. So no, I don't live in New York and I don't live in Boston. I live in Columbia, South Carolina, which you would never want to fly from. It's one of the more expensive airports in the South. But I can find a cheap flight from somewhere nearby to New York or to Boston. as cheap, guys, as like 59 bucks. This could be your Frontier flight. This could be your Spirit Airlines, your JetBlue. This is where you're going to use your low-cost airline to get you to New York so that you can use your cheap flight to Paris. Now, I'm going big here with a Paris option, but there are other very cheap flights around the country that aren't necessarily heading to Europe. I'm just kind of showing you in the grand scheme how you could use this option. And really, we could do this for anything. Let's say, you don't want to go to Paris, you want to go to Orlando. Then even with putting in Orlando, I want to go to Orlando from anywhere in May, I can immediately see, even in the US, what are my cheapest options? Look, it's Charleston, 98 bucks. I can fly to Orlando in May for 98 bucks. That's a great flight. I can actually tell you what airline it's on. It's on Breeze. But as you start to hunt, you'll start to see this is kind of fun. I'm putting in where I want to go in the first box. I'm not putting in the from. So that's actually what that box is asking you. If I remove Orlando, you'll see from ? No. Where I want to go. Tell me what city you want to go to. Put it in that box. And then let's start to play with what are the options based on where I live to get there, my cheapest option to get there. So we've done some research. We've found what some options might be. Your other website is going to be Google Flights. And you can literally Google this if you want. Just put in Google Flights into Google and it will send you here. And folks don't realize, but Google actually runs the back end of all of the airlines' ticketing and software. So they built it and they're giving you a front end view of it. And because of that, it's actually pretty magical. You can sit here. Hey, Lily, sorry, I saw you just popped in and you're going to watch later. So I'll say hi to you while you're still on really fast. And hi to everyone else. And Carol, I see your question. So I'm going to get to your question in just a second too. So with Google Flights, the sweet part here is you can put into up to 4 airports. This is where you want to leave from. So for me, I could put in my home airport. Odds are I'm not going to leave from here. It's definitely more expensive. I want to put in Charleston. A lot of folks in South Carolina don't realize it, but it is cheaper to fly from Charleston more often than not than it is for me to drive to Charlotte, but I'm going to put in Charlotte as well. And maybe I'm feeling crazy and I'm willing to drive to Atlanta. So I've put in 4 airports. That's your max. You can put in more, but it'll sometimes get really grumpy at you. So just stick with 4. And I can put in 4 of where I want to go to. You may not have 4 of where you want to go to. You may just, have one particular city, but there is a chance that you have multiple airports. So let's say you want to go to New York. I could choose all 3 New York airports if I wanted to. I can actually just choose the city and it'll put in all airports, but we'll do them one at a time because it's being picky. So we'll do JFK, then we'll go through and we'll do LaGuardia, and we'll do Newark. So those are all 3 in New York. So here's where Google comes in. I've filled it in with all the things that I'm willing to have as options. I have not put in my dates, and I don't want you to put in dates right away. Give it a second and let it populate. And I don't know if you guys can see this and what screen you're seeing, but it's actually telling you, it's showing you how being flexible is amazing. And it's giving you the cheapest option for those flights. Now, if you didn't already realize this, the best day of the week to fly is always on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Way less traffic on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and you can see that automatically in those prices. I've got a $48 flight. If I was willing to fly on a Tuesday or Wednesday, that flight jumps to $74 if I switch to Friday, and we're up to $100 if we're looking at flying over the weekend. That's really double the cost. And I know $100 may not sound huge, but in the grand scheme of things, you just paid double the cost to fly on a weekend. Now this $100 right here is Easter weekend, so that's kind of why it's that outlier. But you can see how cheap that was. If I was willing to fly on a Wednesday, I could get as cheap as $48. As soon as I put in my to date, it'll give you, now we're in the return box and I start to see what those options are. So I could fly home. I'm flying there on a Wednesday. I could fly home on a Saturday or the next Tuesday. I'm really going to be able to get both of those flights for $48. So in the end, hit search and it's going to tell you what your options are. And this best option it appears, is on Spirit Airlines, $48 round trip from Charlotte to LaGuardia. That is a crazy cheap flight. That's $24 per flight to fly to LaGuardia. You cannot get there on a tank of gas for $24. So you start to see like, oh, wow, we could go to New York. Now, obviously, we have some other expenses to going to New York, but this is at least letting you play with it. There's another level that I wanted to go here, though, tonight. So that's kind of how to find the flights. But I did want to hit some other key parts about flights and really hotels. A lot of our travel industry has gone to what they call dynamic pricing. And that means that I just searched for that search. If we all went and we all searched for that search, within about an hour, those tickets would jump in price. If you routinely search the same search, within an hour, you'll see those prices jump. And then you'll be frustrated. You'll say, why can I not get the price that I was seeing? So that's where dynamic pricing comes in. They are going to assume that there's a higher demand for that flight and they're going to bump the price. Now, if you see that happen, if it's a tiny bump, maybe you just go ahead and pay for it. But if it's a larger bump, really you just want to wait 24 hours and hopefully it was your searching that was doing it. Try again in another day. Or option 2 is to try on an incognito window. So if you've not ever done that, if you're in Chrome, go to File, New Window, and you'll see Incognito Window. So an incognito window means open up a window with no cookies, no tracking. As long as I'm not logged in, they're not going to put those pieces together that this is the same person who just searched for 4 days on this flight and is now ready to make this booking. So sometimes either doing all your searching in an incognito window so that any trackers that you build aren't going to stay connected to you when you go to book, or booking in an incognito window, kind of either way, can definitely help you save some money in the very end because they're notorious for raising that price the more they see you look at it. So that's flights and hotels, just to warn you on that dynamic pricing. Now, we also see that when it comes to redeeming points. So if you've been saving up your credit card points and you're ready to redeem them for a flight and you've done a bunch of research, it will also raise the amount of points that it's requiring when it sees somebody do that same search over and over again. Or if you're in my boat, last year we took our kids up to Maine, and it was a big family trip up to Maine. Well, the minute I start to buy 7 tickets on points, it starts to see, ooh, we got some demand here. It actually won't let you buy 7 tickets on demand, or on points, all in the same purchase. So I've long learned 6 is the max I can get. I will always buy those 6 tickets right then. I will get that lowest price. And if I try to immediately then go and buy the 7th ticket, it's going to cost more. The points are going to jump. And sometimes that jump they'll try like another 10,000 points. So that 7th ticket for me, I always wait a couple of days and buy that last person's ticket after the system has decided, oh, maybe there's not a huge demand for this flight after all. But many times I have to be okay with the fact that last ticket is going to cost more points than the first 6 did. And that's just the hard part of being in a big family and using points, but just so that you're ready for that one, that they will see that and make those adjustments, which is a little frustrating. Oh, that's so fun. So Anna says you used Google Flights and you got your girls' trip to Niagara Falls. I'm so glad that you were able to get a deal, and there are some fun prices up into that area. So I have one more site that I want you to bookmark. And this is one where you can take your points a little further. Well, first, if you hop over to Southern Savers, anyone that's on Facebook, I can put in the links when we're done to this chart. I made you guys a chart. I'm going to share it with you. But if you use a credit card regularly, you can turn around and use your credit cards at a number of airlines. So I made a chart for you. I don't expect you to be able to read this if you're watching on your phone. But in the long run, this is very, very helpful because it helps me to know where can I use my Chase points or my American Express points or Capital One, whatever card you have that does travel. they work at a lot of different airlines. And I didn't put in like how these points transfer, but for most of them, one Chase point equals one Air Canada point. So it's on a 1-to-1 ratio. There's a few airlines that it's not as great of a ratio, but I want to say probably like 95% of these are a 1-to-1 ratio. So for example, last year when I took the whole family to Maine, I had to think about that for a second, I was able to use points to book those tickets, 1-to-1 ratio, heading up on, how did we get up there? American Airlines is how we went up there, using points to do that. And I'm going to show you some tricks to be able to do that, because when you look at American, which is right here in the middle, you'll see, hey, it doesn't work on any cards. But you can, if you know how to work it, you can get those points to go to those other airlines. So this is a good cheat sheet for you. I do want you to realize that a lot of times, and I put them by alliance, so Star Alliance, SkyTeam, One World, a lot of times they play well with each other. So for example, I can actually book American Airlines reward tickets through Alaska Airlines. I still have an American Airlines ticket. I just used Alaska points to do that. And this is taking it a whole nother step further. I can convert American Express points to Hawaiian Airlines, and then you can easily transfer from Hawaiian to Alaska. They own each other. So that one's like a 3-step to get there, but you can get there and you can use your points instead of looking at that and saying, oh, I can't use points anywhere for American Airlines. Yes, you can. You just need to know how. Now, Carrie, you asked, where do we fly out of? Typically, I fly out of Charlotte or Charleston. Charleston has a lot of times even cheaper flights than Charlotte. Charleston also has Breeze Airlines, which we love. They're a low-cost airline, but they are more reliable than others, and super, super fun staff that work there. Okay, now we have this chart. If you head to Southern Savers and you see the video that is at the top of the site, I linked to this chart below the video, but I will put the link in on the comments when we're done as well, just so you can save it, tuck it away. It will be helpful as you get going. I also put hotels in down below. This is based on if you have a rewards credit card. Our goal with rewards credit cards, we're trying to redeem for the best points that we possibly can. So this is the last site that I want you to remember. And that is, it's called seats.aero. And that is seats like the seat you're sitting in, seats.aero. In seats.aero, you can put in a number of places. Let's say I want to go to Seattle from Charleston or Charlotte. I'm going to put in 2 airports here. If you put in more than 2, it really flips out. Seats.aero is free. You don't have to pay for it. But if you want to do advanced searchings, it's going to tell you that the only way to do that is to pay. So back down, put in less airports if that's what you need to do. You can put in a specific departure date, and then you can also say, you know what, be willing to search plus or minus 3 days from now. So I'm telling it, find me flights from Charleston to Charleston or Charlotte to Seattle. And the specific purpose of this site is to find the least amount of points needed to be able to make that flight. And it becomes magical because when it's all done, and it takes it a minute, it's still thinking, you'll see this bar finish off when it finishes thinking. When it's all said and done, you'll start to see like, wait a second, I didn't realize that I could go around the corner and back again to be able to book a flight cheaper than I could actually book it through that airline. So for example, the first things that it's already pulled up are American airline flights, but it's telling you right here in this little box, and I'll zoom to get you to see it, is the little Alaska symbol. So it's telling you, yes, this is an American Airlines flight, but I want you to book it through Alaska Airlines. Remember, I can transfer my American Express points to Hawaiian and then to Alaska. So if you have an American Express card, that would get you some points there. There we go. It just finished. I just saw it kick in. So now it's done all the searching. Let's zoom back out. Come on, friend. And I want to click to just see the lowest points possible. Right there. I can get 16,000 points on American Charlotte to Seattle. I can book it through Alaska for $17.5. Many times Alaska comes in cheaper, which is surprising that it didn't. But you get an idea of some points that maybe you didn't even realize were there. Now, this is a specific flight. This is on July 1st, but I could fly all the way from Charlotte to Seattle for only 16,000 points. Now, normally, if I wanted to book on American, we're really looking at a lot of times like 30,000 points for an economy ticket. So my guess is American's running a deal right now on that Charlotte to Seattle leg that we don't normally see, because this is normal, being in the 30,000, 35,000 mark. But if you start to see like, ooh, I have those points, I could do that, you start to realize how awesome those tickets might be. So to put this back in kind of the story of the boyfriend going to Europe, ended up putting it into seats.aero for him and finding a flight from, I think it was from JFK to Paris, 6,000 points, which is like pennies in points land. 6,000 points, JFK to Paris on Virgin Atlantic. And this is where the chart comes in, and you realize like, oh, Virgin Atlantic, I can use points from everybody. Chase, American Express, Citi, Capital One, they all go to Virgin Atlantic. You can actually book other tickets through Virgin Atlantic too. So I've tried to put that over here. You can book Air France tickets through Virgin Atlantic. You can actually book Delta through Virgin Atlantic. So we can end up getting those really cheap points that Virgin Atlantic is offering on flights that you may actually normally have booked yourself. Hey, it's a Delta flight out of Atlanta. I booked it through Virgin Atlantic. I'm still on the same flight, but I did it for 12,000 points instead of Delta's 40,000 points. So kind of realizing how some of these point systems work, where I can transfer the points to get an even cheaper flight, makes your points go even further. So that does require a rewards credit card. And I know for some people, credit cards are a no-go. But if you can be wise and you can pay them off, then using them can be a huge way to have some pretty amazing vacations. For us, any purchase that we make goes on a credit card. So all of our gas, all of our groceries, some of our bills even, if there's no fee, I'm not going to pay a fee to put it on a credit card. That is getting a little silly at this point. But any regular purchase is going on a credit card so that we can earn Chase Unlimited miles on that purchase or American Express points on that purchase to then turn around and use those. And Carrie, yes, that 16,000 points was a one-way flight that we were looking at for that Charlotte to Seattle. And if you actually click on this over here, it'll even say, would you like to go book this? And if we choose it, it will send you straight to American to book it if you want to. And it'll pull it up for you, already ready to go, to where all the dates and the flights are right there for that price. Now, keep in mind the cheapest flight option. So I clicked on it just to show you guys. The cheapest flight option is not always the most ideal flight. And I'm kind of hunting here to even find that 12.5. Let's see, let's sort it by price. So it's got a layover in Phoenix. It is a 12,000 point ticket. It has a layover in Phoenix and it gets into Seattle at midnight. That's maybe not the ideal flight for you. Then you start to realize, you know what, if I want to take a more ideal direct route, it is going to cost more. But you could still get that for $16,005 and $5.60 in taxes. So you still got to kind of play with the lowest amount of points possible to be able to get there if you went on that flight. Okay, so great question. Carrie says, how much do you have to spend to get 16,000 points? Now, this is where sometimes if you're going to put money on credit cards, you put money on credit cards wisely. So we look at what credit card maybe gives you the most return for those points. So American Express, for example, the American Express Gold Card, if you wanted American Express points, offers 4 times the points on groceries. Now, it has a pretty high annual fee. There are some perks that kind of cancel out that annual fee a little bit, but you need to make sure you're going to use those perks before you sign up for that card. Maybe you don't have an American Express, you just have a Chase. Well, Chase is going to give you 2 times the points on pretty much every purchase you make. That's just how Chase works on some of their cards. So if I'm buying groceries and I buy all my groceries on a credit card, for us, that might be over the course of a month, about $700 in groceries. Well, that's 1,400 points just from groceries. If you add in gas, you start to see how making every purchase on a credit card could add up. There's some other ways to earn points as well. And some of that can be online shopping. So you can actually link if you use, I never pronounce them right, but Rakuten. If you use Rakuten, you can link that to an American Express account. It's the only one that they link with, but instead of getting cash back, you actually get American Express points back. Then you can turn around and use those points to get flights. And this actually does work out. If you're good at using your points, you're good at finding deals, then you have actually taken, maybe the $30 in cash back and you've made it worth $90 or $100 in cash back because you're getting more than a point, a penny, basically. Our goal is to really make those points equal more like 4 to 5 cents a point in terms of the redemption that we're getting that high. So you can get some cash back. You can buy the things you would normally buy. We do some online school. I actually just paid some of our tuition on a credit card. And this was the first time today. I was like, I've been using this online school for years and just realized that I could pay it on a credit card, which I will then promptly turn around and pay off. But thank you, online school, for helping us, achieve another vacation sometime in the future. So it doesn't mean that I'm achieving 16,000 points a month. Don't look at it that way. But do realize that, slowly by spending wisely on the right card, that you can achieve them a little bit faster, maybe. Chase as well will give you 2 times on dining. So maybe you have a couple cards and you say, oh, this one's the one that we eat out with, and this one's the one we use groceries with, or this one we travel with. Maybe you have one that gives a higher point on travel. So what I would recommend there is actually map out the cards you have and the rewards that those cards give you. Know them. Like I put them in an Apple Note, so they're on my phone. If I'm ever in a store and I don't really know, which one do I use here, then it can help you remember, and you'll get the hang of it as you start to use them more, so that you know that you're using the right card in the right place. Okay, Dee Dee, great question. Have I done credit card churning? I've seen references to it online, but I don't know if it's worth it or risky. So no, I actually do not recommend that. So credit card churning is where you say, hey, American Express is offering 60,000 bonus points when you first sign up, and they are. I put a link to that in the bottom of the video on Southern Savers. But that doesn't mean that I want to get the card. I want to keep it open for a year. I want to earn the 60,000 points. And then I want to cancel the card. So opening and canceling accounts is killing your credit score in the end. Not really where you want to go. You really want to just open an account and then be wise with how you're using that card so that you're maxing out the rewards that that card's going to give you. Be wise as well with all the benefits of that card. So for example, if you did open the American Express card, one of the perks is that they will give you $100 back when you eat at different participating restaurants. So pull up those restaurants. You get that perk, you get 2 $50 refunds a year. Well, make sure you're getting them, because that's a free date night, basically, right? Don't miss out on that. It's basically you've paid the annual fee, and this is you recouping that annual fee. It is a benefit of the card. Don't leave it on the table. So make sure when you're mapping out, this gives me this many points for groceries and this many points for dining out, that you're mapping out those other perks too, because those are how you're bringing down that annual fees cost. And if you're not going to do that, if you never eat out, you haven't had a date night in 20 years, that sounds very horrible and sad, then that needs to be factored in. Hey, I'm not going to recoup that cost. Probably not the card you want to go with. So those are things to consider. But I do not recommend churning cards, Dee Dee. I would just open it. Let's keep it open and let's use it wisely. If occasionally you realize, hey, I think we've flown Alaska 3 times now, maybe we should add the Alaska credit card to the wallet. And we're just going to use it when we fly Alaska because you get more points when you pay with that company's credit card. Great. Maybe you earn enough that you can get the little 70,000 points that Alaska is offering right now. And we just keep it open. A lot of the individual cards, I don't actually recommend. I would just say, get 2. If you're going to get 2, get like a Chase and an Amex. Get ones where I can use those points at lots of places. Alaska points I can use to book for other airlines, but they're still just Alaska points. I can't move them outside of Alaska. I can only use them for flights. So it can be, if you're going to use them, great. But if you're not going to use them, maybe you hold back and you just stick with a Chase or an Amex and just leave them open. Don't kill your credit score. The point of churning is to constantly get those high point offers for signing up, but it is going to hurt your credit in the end. Okay, yes, let's move on. Carol says, how about the other costs attached? Okay, so if we're going to fly, what about cabs and car rentals? So this is where, if we find a deal, we do need to consider where are we heading and what are my options to move around once I get there. Depending on where you're going, your options are renting a car. You may not have the option of city transport. You may be looking at Ubers. Those can get pricey really fast. So learn a little bit about the city before, just because you found a deal, learn a little bit about the city before you start booking it. Do I have the option of public transport? Is it safe? Is it something that's regularly used? What would the options be to get from the airport to a hotel, to some of the things in town? And do some of that research. Now, in terms of car rentals, they're actually a lot cheaper than you may realize. And there's some other options for renting cars too. But with car rentals, just inside the same city, if let's say we were going to fly to San Francisco and you wanted to rent a car, I would probably do city transport and not rent the car. But if you decided to rent the car, then you're probably looking at less than $40 a day to rent a car. Maybe you rent a car when you want to leave the city to go out and see, Muir Woods that's on the other side of the Golden Gate, or we're wanting to go further than transport will take us. Then we rent a car for just a day. We don't rent a car for the whole trip. We actually plan ahead what your goals are. What days do I need a car? And potentially you don't need one every day, right? Maybe you've gone big and you flew all the way to Hawaii. We're going huge on those Alaska deals. There's actually some crazy deals out of Atlanta right now, guys. So you've gone big, you've flown all the way out to Hawaii, and you realize, on day 1, I just want to sit at the condo and not do anything. Well, don't rent a car until day 2. Don't worry about it. If we can get from the airport to the condo, then let's deal with the car when we actually do want to move around. You're going to save a lot of money to do that. Public transport is definitely a thing. And if you're looking at Europe, hands down, that is the way you're moving around. You're not going to need a car in most European cities unless you're wanting to get out of the city. But even there, I would encourage you, if I wanted to move from Paris to Switzerland, those aren't even like in a car that would take you multiple hours. In a train, it's a $50 train ticket from Paris to Switzerland. So take the train. Don't drive. You are not going to love the price of gas in Europe either. So take the train. That's what I would encourage you to do in terms of once you flew somewhere, trying to move around once you got there. And I know a lot of folks do think, well, if I drove, I've got my car when I'm there. But do consider if you take a car like New York, you have to pay to park that car, and that is a huge cost. So a number of these big cities, having a car is not something you're going to want to do in the first place. You're going to want to figure out other ways to move around, whether it's walking or public transport, for sure. Yes, Carrie, you have me pegged. How'd you know? It is definitely on my radar. Okay, so let me move through some other things too. So we've decided where we're going, whether you're going to drive there, whether you're going to fly there. Let's talk about hotels. I've always shared this one. I am a huge fan of being loyal to hotels. But in the couple of years since we've done Q&As, our loyalty has switched. So I am a lifetime Titanium member at Marriott, which means I can basically ask for anything that I want and they would give it to me. But Marriott, while I love them and I love the perks, when I want to redeem points, the cheapest point redemption that you'll find with Marriott a lot of times is about 20,000 to 25,000 points for podunk hotels, for Fairfield Inns and Spring Hill Suites. And they're not bad hotels, but they're not fancy hotels either. 15 to 20,000 points is a lot of points. So in the last couple of years and kind of learning more about point travel, we've actually switched to Hyatt. Now, Hyatt does not have as many hotels as Marriott does, so that gets a little tricky. But Hyatt point redemptions start at 3,500 points for a night versus 20,000. And earning them is the same rate. So if you're part of the Hyatt program and you stay one night in a Hyatt hotel, you're going to earn 4 times the points just because you're part of the loyalty program, 4 times whatever you paid for the hotel. And then you're earning those points as you go along. There are some other ways to earn points as well. You can have the credit card if you wanted to, but already redemptions are super, super cheap compared to Marriott. So a lot of point travelers are Hyatt loyal because of that. They are the cheapest point redemption program. And I put it in our little chart, but I can also use Chase points at Hyatt hotels. So I can, if I have a Chase credit card, 3,500 points to stay the night in a Hyatt hotel, not a huge amount of points that I'm having to spend to have a free night in a hotel. So things to consider: being loyal, earning those points, but maybe being willing to switch up. It's at least worth looking into. Something to consider as you look for points is switching over. I should use my superpower to tell Marriott to go lower, but sadly Marriott actually just readjusted their points 2 weeks ago, and their points got even worse in their yearly readjustment. So I don't think we're seeing Marriott come down on that one. I think we're only going to see them go up. But that's hotels. Now, I have another tip for you, though, on VRBOs, and this is a new favorite tip for me. So as you talk about how do we earn points, if you want to someday take some flights, there's a little secret point side that folks don't realize might be there. And I don't know about you guys, but when we travel, we do tend to stay VRBO in some particular cities. Again, traveling with all the kids, a lot of times it can be cheaper than getting 2 hotel rooms for 7. I'm not going to shove 7 people in one hotel room. I don't want to do it. They don't want me to do it. It's just not how we travel. So I will tend to look for a cheap VRBO if I can, because then I get a kitchen. I can cook some meals. This is lowering our total cost. So an inside tip that I've learned in the last couple years is that you can actually book VRBOs through the airlines. So if you are loyal to an airline, or maybe you're like, hey, I can use those Alaska points to book American Airlines, you can sign up for an Alaska loyalty member number. You don't ever have to fly with them, but you can sign up for a member number. And then I can actually book, I'll show you, I can book a VRBO through them and earn points to do it. I can do this also through Delta and probably others. I've only done it through Alaska and through Delta. So when I come down here and I'm on their site, look for stays, which I had it pulled up last night, but it may not like that I have it all shrinked in here. Well, I know exactly where it is on the Delta page, so we'll go Delta. And when you're on Delta's site, we'll let it load here for a second. Come on, Delta. Everyone's just, they're not wanting us to give away their secrets. There we go. Okay, so stays is right here. Click on stays. This is actually going to bring up hotels too. You don't ever want to book a third-party hotel though, so don't book hotels through this. It's not a good idea. But I can book rentals. So let's say I want to go visit my kiddos in college. I can put in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I can put in a weekend. Maybe I want to go for Easter weekend. We're pondering it. Haven't made up our minds. And hit search. And in the end, if I book this through Delta, logged in, I'm going to earn Delta miles. And it's even going to tell you. So the first few things that pull up are hotels. I don't want to book hotels through a third party. It's really not a good idea, nor is it a good idea to book airlines through a third party. They do not have to really honor your flight. If they overbook a flight, you're the first one off the flight. So you want to book directly through Delta, through American, through the actual airline. But as we scroll down, we're going to see actual rentals. Now, there's a lot of hotels in in Chattanooga. But then we start to get into some actual rentals that are down here. For example, this rental is a hidden gem in the historic district. I'm going to zoom in. This is 2 nights. This isn't super cheap, but in the end, I would earn 1,770 miles if I booked that that house. You get the idea. My goal, obviously, here would be to book a cheaper house, not some of the more expensive ones. But you're still seeing like, wow, I could earn miles to do that. I, as well, can pay for this with a credit card that gives me points for shopping online. So not only have I earned Delta miles to book the house, but then I've earned credit card miles when I paid for the house. So this is going to work. And the first question everyone always gives me is, well, does that increase the price? It does not increase the price, actually. You can pull up regular VRBO and pull up your Delta stays or your Alaska stays, and you will see the exact same price down to the dollar on that rental. You might as well, versus booking through VRBO where you're getting nothing. This way you are getting some pretty, magical extra points that you hadn't even planned on. So if you're doing VRBOs, this is your new way. Just pick an airline and start to earn some miles for that airline. Now, if you're going to do that, I would encourage you, while I'm showing you Delta, I would actually encourage you to pick Alaska over Delta. The biggest one being I can redeem those Alaska miles for a number of different airlines, and Alaska redemptions start at they start at like 9,000 points for some miles. Delta, the cheapest flight you'll find to redeem, is usually in the 30,000 point range. So go with the one that I'm not going to need as many. If I can earn 1,700 points to go on, one VRBO stay, and that's just on the airline points, not on the credit card points we got on top of it, you start to see how that starts to add up. Yes. My husband obviously just got home and is now is chiming in. But points are like a little drugstore currency. You can get a little addicted for sure. Okay. It is a lot. I know. I'm taking you a little deep there. So let's jump out of points land. But I wanted to hit that one because VRBOs are a good way to save. Another element to VRBOs too, if you're going to go on a trip with other people, this is even cheaper. Not doing hotels, we can now put multiple families in one house and we can split that cost in half. If you're willing and you trust them, then you put it on your credit card and you get the points, right? And then they pay you back. But if not, you figure out a different way to pay. But splitting that house is always going to make that cost per night even lower. So considering, hey, let's go on this trip together and then let's break out and get that 3-bedroom house. The kids can bunk in and we can split those costs to go a little faster or go a little further. And Lily, I agree. It is super sad. Southwest this past week, if you didn't hear, just changed their plan. They're getting rid of free checked bags. I kind of almost feel like we're going to see them change that tune. This is what has made Southwest what they are. But in today's world, we're seeing more and more airlines charging for bags and more passengers not traveling with bags. So everyone's just doing that carry-on and they're packing as tight as they can. And if that's the case, then Southwest is hoping that travelers are going to do the same thing and not be as bothered by the lack of 2 bags. But really what it was we saw a lot of families traveling Southwest because 2 free bags is pretty awesome. So I will give you kind of an advanced tip there. And this is something that has helped our family out. But one idea, if you do have someone in your family that travels a bit, maybe a spouse that works and has to use an airline, if he's loyal, if you earn status, even a baby status with some of the airlines, Google whatever status you have and Google the word status match. So there's a number of airlines that will match other airlines' status levels. Meaning, if I fly with Delta, maybe you have a Delta credit card, you're going to get a free bag. If you have status with Delta, you still get a free bag with status. Well, Alaska will match Delta's status levels. So now you've never flown Alaska in your life, but you're going to get a free bag to fly with them as well. So we also see this in the hotel land. Sadly, I don't have anyone I can transfer my Marriott Titanium to. I would love to do that. But there are a number of hotels that will also status match other hotels. So this could be a way, if you've got some work travel that you do, that you can take advantage of your work travel and maybe spin it to some different brands. Maybe your work only travels with one particular brand, but this is going to help you to status match with some other brands and get some other perks like free bags on those other flights. Okay, now early on I had a question on Carol and I didn't answer it. So let's hit eating out and attractions, which was Carol's questions too. So first off, the number one way to save on eating out is obviously not to eat out. And that doesn't help you very much, but having a plan for your meals is huge. Maybe if you're on a trip, you plan to eat out for one meal a day. If you can, make that meal lunch. It is always cheaper than eating out for dinner. Pack with you things for breakfast or stay in hotels. The cheaper hotels, humorously, the cheaper the hotel, the more benefits that hotel gives you. So you're going to get free breakfast in a lot of those, Spring Hill Suites and Fairfield Inns of the world, Hyatt houses, versus our super fancy hotels that offer you nothing. So maybe you can swing free breakfast depending on the hotel, eating out for lunch, and then planning some easy meals for dinner. And this is where maybe you went VRBO or you went with the Hyatt House or the Residence Inns, those hotels that do offer a small kitchenette. So you've got some sort of refrigerator, you have some sort of way to cook a meal would be huge in terms of saving some money. I love when we travel to actually have some things pre-cooked so you don't even have to deal with it. Cook them up, freeze them, and then all you have to do is really wait for it to thaw in the fridge, right? I don't even need a freezer in that sense. I left with it frozen. Slowly it's going to thaw. Chili would be a super easy one. Make some extra spaghetti sauce, already frozen, ready to go. You kind of know your key easy meals. I cannot tell you how many times a vacation has started with tacos in our world. It's a super easy one to already have the meat cooked. All I need to do is grab a tomato and some lettuce, and my kids turn them into nachos. So we just grab a bag of chips and we're almost there. Anytime we can bring as much groceries with us as possible is also a key one. So if you're driving, part of what is packed in the car needs to be your stockpile. If I'm buying it on sale, when it's on sale, I don't want to go out of town and just pay full price for all those things. So I want to have planned what we're going to eat and be buying those things for the weeks before we leave so that they are packed and ready to go in a box. And maybe when I get there, I'm buying milk. My kids could basically drink a cow. The amount of milk that we drink in our house is crazy. So using our ice chest for an entire gallon of milk is taking a lot of space. So milk usually doesn't travel with us. I will buy a gallon when we get there. They'll drink the whole thing over a weekend. And I'm kind of okay with that. Milk's not actually that bad for you. But, you pick and choose the things that you're willing to pay for. Milk is also something I'm not going to find on sale. I'm just going to buy it every time I go to the store. So it is what it is. But it's a huge way to save too. So have those key go-to meals. Another one is even when you're in the car moving, that you think about those lunches. So for us, we made a road trip just in the last week. And that meant I stopped by the deli at Lowe's Foods and I grabbed deli chicken salad and I brought a loaf of bread. So loaf of bread and chicken salad and a throwaway knife. And I could make 5 chicken salad sandwiches for everyone in the car. Deli chicken salad's kind of a splurge. The little container of it was about $12, but I just served the whole family lunch for $12. Brought a bag of chips, packed some drinks for everybody, and it was a pretty delicious lunch without having to go to Chick-fil-A or a fast food restaurant. You are not going to feed 5 people at Chick-fil-A for $12. It's I'm pretty sure mathematically impossible. It's probably more like 35 to 40 bucks. So those things add up. We don't think about the fast food, but you need to, and that's part of your trip. Even the getting there is part of your trip. So that's the easiest meal to bring, right? Even if I'm not packing an ice chest, I can bring something in the car for just a couple of hours. So not forgetting about your road trip meal as you're traveling is a huge one to help you save on those eating costs. And yeah, Lily, I agree. Microwave rice. So those bagged rices, they take 90 seconds at Uncle Ben's. Seeds of Change. We really like the Seeds of Change wild rice. I ended up finding some at the bin store recently, and we ate like a whole case of them for a crazy, crazy price. But at 90 seconds in the microwave, you don't need pots and pans. You don't need to wait the ton of time to let it cook either. That is a great one for taking on trips. And I love that you mentioned it because I was not thinking there. Oh, goodness. That sounds like a very rough day. Carrie says her oldest is 9 and put ramen in the microwave for 3 minutes without water. Yeah, we're not there yet, obviously, Carrie, but they will get there someday, I promise. Let's see. So I think we've hit a lot of them. Oh, tickets and activities and attractions. That was Carol's other question and the last one that I had too. So once you get there, how do we do things? So first off, I would encourage you to consider free things. There's a lot of free things. There still are, I promise, in this world. So look for those first. We updated a number of ours in the last year. So if you head to Southern Savers and you look at frugal travel on Southern Savers website, it's up at the top under frugal travel, you'll find, 20 free things in Boston, 23 free things in New York. We've got them for most major cities. So start there. And yes, those things do change, and feel free to send me an email if they do, and I will gladly update them. But start there and work through the list of free things. There are usually some pretty cool free things too. Also check wherever you're going. If you find that maybe there's a manufacturer in the area, most manufacturers actually give free tours of the process of how you do it. So those could be some of the most fun moments of your trip, and they just were a free tour that all you had to do was sign up for. A lot of times they do require that you pre-sign up before you go, but completely free. And this could be you head to Maine and you go to LL Bean, right? You can get a free behind the scenes tour. It's kind of fun, but you didn't have to pay anything for it. So look for free. Another one here is cashback. So I mentioned Rakuten earlier, but Rakuten works with Viator and a few others for cashback. So if we're looking on their site and you see, hey, they're offering, I'm trying to look and see what their offers are today. So these are all the higher cashbacks, and these, they change, but at the same time, they don't change a ton. So like right now, Groupon is offering 10% cash back. That means if I went to Groupon and I bought a deal for tickets to Universal Studios or somewhere fun, I'm going to get 10% back of whatever I paid Groupon for those tickets because I went through this site first. So Rakuten, there's a number of cashback sites. This one used to be called Ebates, and Rakuten bought them. So if you've been couponing for ages, Ebates was the one that I would always recommend. With cashback sites, I do recommend that you just pick one. There's a ton of them. Just pick one. You will not remember what buckets of money you have all over the internet. And most of them have a threshold before they'll even pay you. So this way you have a better chance of earning that threshold and getting that cash back. Rakuten also, I mentioned earlier, you can actually go straight to your American Express points rather than cash back if you want as well. But Groupon would be a big one. If I was going to go and I was going to try to look for some attraction discounts, now you have another 10% back. Viator is the one that I was looking to see if they were offering. Let's just come up here and do travel and vacations on cashback. So TripAdvisor owns Viator. So they kind of alternate between who they're offering cashback for. But TripAdvisor, I can book actual tours through. So maybe you are going to head to Charleston and you want to go on an excursion out to islands and go bird watching or go hunting for shark's teeth. It's a pretty fun excursion. I did it with a kid a few years ago. Well, I can book this by clicking through Rakuten to TripAdvisor, and I'm going to get 10% back on the cost of that trip. That doesn't mean that the trip's going to be magically free, but you just got 10% back. And that adds up, right? So that's a big one as you're hunting. And Carrie, I agree. Just email me. If you want to travel, I'll just book your trip. I find it very fun, and I will immediately stop work just to plan other people's vacations. If anything, my husband would love that because I will stop trying to plan vacations for us if I'm busy planning other people's vacations. Kay Taylor, I love your dream. She wants to go from North Carolina to Yellowstone National Park. We did this in 2022. We did the iconic family road trip all the way out to Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon. It's a magical trip. I will tell you, if you want to go from North Carolina to Yellowstone and you want to go by car, that's great. You're looking at 3 days to get out there, 24 hours. We did it in 3 8-hour legs or just drive through the night. If you want to fly, though, the cheapest tickets you'll get, fly into Salt Lake City and then rent a car. Salt Lake City to Yellowstone is about a 7-hour drive. And when you rent a car, just return it to Salt Lake City as well. So just give yourself, I might even be exaggerating on the 7 hours. You'll be in Jackson Hole probably within 4. But then you have, Jackson Hole through the Grand Tetons. It's gorgeous. You're going to love it. But flying into Salt Lake City is some of the cheapest flights that you'll find. You'll find a number of directs as well straight into Salt Lake City. And you've already saved a chunk going on those tickets. So don't look at Jackson Hole. Don't look at Bozeman, Montana for those flights. Those are some of the more expensive flights that you're going to find. Salt Lake City and renting a car, you're still going to have to rent a car if you flew into Jackson Hole or Bozeman. So the car rental is not part of what you're factoring in here. It's the flight to get there, and that's going to get you to Yellowstone super, super cheap. And then looking at going off season, guys. So I mentioned, being flexible with your dates and your times in the very beginning, but even if I don't have a ton of flexibility, at least consider off season for wherever you're heading. And if you don't know when that is, Google it. When is off season for Yellowstone, or when is shoulder season? That would also be the buzzwords to Google. So for example, Yellowstone, the shoulder season, Yellowstone doesn't even open, or most of Yellowstone doesn't even open until mid-May. Half of it's still under snow, even in mid-May. And when we were out there, they still had avalanche warnings, and it was like May 25th. It was kind of crazy. But mid-May to mid-June is shoulder season, really even beginning of June. So it's kind of this 2-week window in May, this 2-week window towards the end of the summer. And the reason for that is that public schools everywhere are still in, right? You're traveling while everyone else is still in school. You're going to get much better rates. It's also going to be way less busy. Zion National Park, anyone that ever wants to head there, just be ready to be in Zion National Park with like 50,000 of your favorite people. It's crazy. I don't know if there is an off season for Zion, but if there is, you should go then. Yellowstone can feel that way in the dead of summer. So trying to go in those shoulder seasons are going to be way less people, but it's going to save you a lot of money too. Those flights are going to be cheaper. Your hotel or your VRBO is going to be cheaper. All of it, just because you're traveling when school is still in season. If you've got kids in school, this can be tricky, right? You're going to deal with your absences. Maybe you can get them to be approved absences. That is not my area of expertise because we homeschool, and I cannot imagine putting my kids in public school and losing my flexibility to be able to go on trips. But at the same time, I cringe because taking my kids to Yellowstone, the school should totally approve that. That is a once in a lifetime trip. So we won't even go there. That's like a whole soapbox. But if you don't have kids and you have the ability to travel during school season, you should be. Summer should not be the window that you're trying to take a dream trip. You should be waiting until those kids are back in school and then you are back on the road. Is kind of your best way to save on some of those trips for sure. And you're right. And sometimes we do just have to spend that extra we saved it. We spent a lot of time finding other things to save on so that we can do what we want and go the places that we want to go. And that's my thing, Lily, really. I will gladly save money and I will gladly wear a shirt that I've owned for probably 12 years and not need another shirt. I don't really care because it puts more money in my pocket to be able to do fun things. I am a memory mom. Anytime I have the ability to give you a fun memory, I'm there, and I'm trying to convince my husband to come along with me. And he's usually pretty good at saying yes, but at the same time, he's also like, really, we have to go somewhere else. So I try to be kind, but it's all about the trip in my book and all about getting to go on places. And Carrie is chiming in as a kindergarten teacher that pre-planned trips can usually be approved as excused. So that's encouraging. Thanks, Carrie. And Bozeman is popular for Yellowstone, but you enjoy Jackson Hole. And I do too. I would gladly go back to Jackson Hole. We stayed there one night, and we stayed to the east of Yellowstone for 2 nights. Jackson Hole is a cute little town, so I'd still fly into Salt Lake City and then spend the night in Jackson Hole. You got a lot of hotels in Jackson Hole, so if you've got some points saved up, it's a good place to use points to be able to stay too. But it's a good leg in to Yellowstone from Jackson Hole. You got to go all the way through the Grand Tetons to get up there. I was sick that day and kind of slept through that leg. It was long enough. I got a nap. Kind of sad. I need to go back just so I can see the Grand Tetons again. But it is a beautiful little town. Okay. Yeah, my husband just said he's on board once we get there. We just have to get there. That he doesn't like the traveling part. Okay, well, we went over on time, guys. We went through a ton of things and probably a little overwhelming as we went deep diving into points. But if you've got questions that I didn't cover, feel free to send me an email. As you can tell, I can talk vacations for a while, or to leave a comment and I will gladly answer them. To recap, I'll put the links that I used as we were digging through flights in below the video too, but it was kayak.com, Google Flights, and seats.aero, A-E-R-O, were the 3 main sites for hunting for flights and then hunting for deals with points on flights. So hopefully that will help some folks as you try to plan some trips and see where you can go in the near future. We should all get out and go somewhere. It's a lot of fun, I promise. Okay, I will be back next Monday night. We are going to talk, I'm going back and forth. I think we're going to talk meal planning, freezer cooking. We kind of went there a little bit on, this whole eating out and saving money on vacations. But having a meal plan is one of the key ways to save on groceries. So we're going to go back to that and just some tips for coming up with what's for dinner and doing it on a budget. So that's our plan for next week. And Carrie, yes, you're signed up. If my husband doesn't want to come, you can be my +1. I will gladly tag along with anyone that is willing to travel with me. Even my grown kids are now like, really? We have to go on another trip? I just want to come home on break. Like, no home on break. We're going somewhere. Someday they will see the joy in this, I promise. So join me next week, meal planning, freezer cooking, back to grocery savings, and I'll be back on tomorrow. We're going to do a drugstore video at 2 tomorrow. Normally I do it at 3, but we're going to be at 2 and cover all the deals that are running at CVS and in Walgreens. It's a pretty great week in both drugstores, so I do recommend that you hop on and join or watch later to catch all of those deals running so that you don't miss anything, because there's some fun freebies this week. Oh, and ever have challenges because you didn't book direct with the airline? So Joyce, great question. I'll jump on your question before we end here. So first, I would never book direct, or I would never not book direct with the airline. Let me put it that way. When you book through a third party, you are going to run into some challenges. If your flight gets canceled, Delta is not going to deal with you. Delta is going to say, hey, you booked through Expedia. You're going to have to deal with Expedia to get rebooked. That is not where you want to be. So, you're going to have to be careful if you ever use third parties to book. I would not recommend that for airlines. Any sort of delay or cancellation, even weather delays that make you miss the next leg, you want to have booked directly through the airline. So that is a difficulty that I just wouldn't recommend it. Even my Chase folks. So I have a Chase credit card. Chase offers you 10 times the points if you book through their travel portal. Don't do it. I don't care how many points they're going to give you because you are really running some risks of if there is some sort of flight issue, you are really stuck in some hot water and not being able to finish your trip. So that That is a big one, and really one that I would not even touch, Joyce. So that is your answer. Just don't do it on those third parties for airlines. You're good on your excursions, on your fun activities, booking through TripAdvisor and Viator, which TripAdvisor owns, getting that cash back through Rakuten, but not your airline trips to get out there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hop off. I'm glad so many of you joined me tonight. It was a lot of fun, a favorite topic for sure. I'll catch you next Monday night, and I'll be back on tomorrow with those drugstore deals. So y'all have a great night, and I will talk to you again soon.